Imagine losing everything you believed your life was about, your family, your dreams, and even your own identity. Imagine, in a moment of deep despair, finding yourself caught between the past that you cannot change and the future that seems impossible to achieve. That's exactly where Kevin's story begins. He is a living example of how relentless life can be, and how twists and turns can catch us off guard. But what do you do when what you lose seems to be all you have left? What if the key to your redemption was where you least expect it, in a new family, in a new beginning, within your own home? In this overcoming drama, Kevin discovers that sometimes what we think of as the end is actually the beginning of something bigger. The rejection, losses, and abandonment he faces are just the prelude to an unexpected reunion with faith, with humanity, and most of all, with himself. When everything seems to have fallen apart, a new family takes him in, showing that hope can emerge in the most unlikely times. But is he ready to embrace this new life? Is redemption within his reach, or will he remain stuck in the past? If you've ever felt like life has left you behind, or that there's no way out of the mistakes you've made, this story will show that we all deserve a second chance. And that, often, true transformation starts from within. Want to find out how Kevin found a new family and, with it, the strength to rebuild his life? Keep reading, because what comes next may change the way you view overcoming. Get ready for a journey of overcoming and exciting twists and turns. If you're already curious about what's to come, subscribe to the channel right now and don't miss any inspiring stories like this. Turn on notifications to receive first-hand updates next videos and closely follow these incredible life lessons that can transform the way you see the world. Join us and always be up to date with new episodes that will motivate you to overcome any challenge. Kevin, upon leaving prison, finds himself on the edge of a new world, a world that he knows, but that treats him like a stranger. Freedom, which for many sounds like a blessing, for him is a difficult enigma to unravel. As soon as he steps out, the weight of the invisible chains still holds him back. Overcoming seems like a distant word, almost unattainable. He has a clear goal, to reconnect with Jamie, his old girlfriend. However, fate is not usually generous to those who have emerged from the shadows. As soon as he knocks on the door, he is not welcomed with the hug he expected. A cold rejection awaits you, the worst kind of pain, the one that comes from someone you love. Deep down, Kevin knew his return to the outside world wouldn't be easy, but hope is stubborn, and he believed, even if for a second, that Jamie would wait for him. But life outside bars took its course. Jamie, unlike Kevin, had changed, moved on. When he hears her say that everything is over, reality hits him like a punch in the gut. The drama of years in prison does not compare to the emptiness of losing someone who was once your safe haven. It's difficult to accept that time hasn't stopped for him like it did during confinement. The scene is heartbreaking, Kevin, standing in the doorway, with nowhere to go, without an anchor to hold on to. He tries, begs for a second chance, but Jamie's words are cutting. What she says is a reflection of someone who is tired of waiting, tired of believing. At this point, Kevin's altruism, the one that made him believe he could be a different man, begins to crumble. This is where the twist begins to unfold, but for now, all he sees is darkness. This internal battle is one that many of us face. We may not have spent years in a cell, but we have all felt the weight of a closed door. It is in these moments that we ask ourselves, how do we move forward? The key to overcoming these obstacles is not ready-made answers, but the ability to find a new path. Kevin, although he doesn't know it yet, is about to find out. Overcoming, at this point, is something he still needs to learn to cultivate. Despite Kevin's frustration, there is a desire for change. He sees Jamie's rejection as the final nail in the coffin of his old life. But it is also, ironically, the first step towards creating a new story. Life's twists and turns take us by surprise, and it is in adversity that we find true strength. Kevin is on the verge of a transformation, although he doesn't realize it himself yet. All you need is a spark, a moment of inspiration to lift you from rock bottom. Many have found themselves in this same situation, feeling lost, not knowing where to go. But the big lesson is that the humility of recognizing that we don't have all the answers is the first step to finding them. Kevin needs to understand that humility is not a sign of weakness, but of strength. By admitting his faults, he can begin to rebuild his life in ways he never thought possible. And so, aimlessly and without ground, Kevin walks, with the weight of a past that doesn't let him move forward. He carries with him the frustration of those who tried and failed. But life, unpredictable as it is, always holds surprises. In rejection, Kevin will find a new opportunity, a new beginning. But first, he needs to face his demons, and they are about to emerge in an unexpected way. Jamie's rejection, far from being the end, is the beginning of a cycle of overcoming. Sometimes you have to lose everything to discover what really matters. For Kevin, the real turning point is yet to come, but before he reaches the light, he will have to go through the darkest moments of his journey. At this point in the story, he is vulnerable, but also at the exact moment when the great transformations take place. Kevin, like any human being, needs to allow himself to feel the pain of loss. It is this feeling, this shock of reality, that pushes you to seek something beyond yourself. But the big question that remains in the air is, will he be able to turn things around? What he doesn't yet know is that Jamie's rejection is the first step towards a reunion with something much bigger, something he never imagined. The pain of loss is one of the most devastating experiences a human being can face, and Kevin feels it deeply when he discovers that his grandmother passed away while he was in prison. She was more than a relative, it was his greatest source of support, his point of reference in a world where he felt increasingly lost. The weight of the news hits Kevin with the force of a hurricane, and he realizes he is truly alone. Death, at this moment, is not just physical, but emotional. It's as if the last link connecting him to a normal life has been broken. As he walks through the house where he spent so many moments with his grandmother, Kevin is flooded with memories. Every corner, every piece of furniture, every smell takes him back to the days when she protected him from the world. Now, he is helpless, with nowhere to run. Humility, so fundamental in his journey, is revealed in the recognition that, as much as he wanted to, he could not be by her side in her last moments. Life didn't wait for him. And this truth consumes him. The drama of this loss goes far beyond the death itself. It's a waste of time, a waste of opportunities he'll never have again. How many times has Kevin thought about how proud his grandmother would be to see him get back on his feet? How many times did you promise yourself that you would take care of her, that you would be the grandson she deserved? These promises now echo like ghosts in your mind. Overcoming seems more distant than ever, because how can we overcome what has already been lost forever? But even in the face of this pain, there is a seed of turnaround. Kevin finds himself at a crossroads. Either he allows the loss to destroy him completely, or he finds the strength in his grandmother's memory to move forward. After all, wasn't she the one who always taught him the importance of perseverance? The inspiration to continue can come from unexpected places, and the image of his grandmother smiling at him in the simplest moments of life is what keeps his heart beating, even if in a weakened way. In the midst of his pain, Kevin is surprised by an unexpected gesture of altruism. The neighboring family, who had promised to take care of his grandmother in the last days of her life, offers Kevin a place to stay. They don't expect anything in return, they just want to honor the wishes of the deceased, who was so concerned about her grandson's future. This show of kindness opens Kevin's eyes to something he had forgotten: the power of altruism, the impact that small gestures can have on our lives. And without even realizing it, he begins to feel a small glimmer of hope. The house, now lifeless, becomes the symbol of loss. But it could also be the place where Kevin finds a new way of living. He remembers the words his grandmother used to say: "Life may be hard, but it is in hardness that we find our strength." Those words now echo in his mind with a new weight, a meaning he only fully understands now that she's gone. Kevin realizes that to honor his grandmother, he needs to stand up and fight for a better life. The altruism of the neighboring family is also a reminder that life goes on. The people around him still believe in him, still see something good in his future. Kevin, however, is trapped in his own pain, unable to see beyond the darkness. But the seed was planted. He may not be ready to move on, but the turnaround begins to slowly germinate, hidden beneath layers of pain and regret. Kevin doesn't know it yet, but this act of kindness will be what propels him toward change. This loss, however devastating, will become the foundation for the transformation to come. The death of Kevin's grandmother symbolizes the end of a cycle, but also the beginning of another. It's as if the universe is laying the groundwork for something bigger, something Kevin can't yet see. He's still grieving, still trying to deal with the weight of guilt and longing. But this pain will ultimately be the catalyst for overcoming it. And, at that point, he needs to understand that the turnaround is waiting for him. The big lesson Kevin begins to learn is that loss is part of life. No one is immune to it, and it is often in losses that we find our greatest strengths. But overcoming this kind of pain requires something beyond courage. It requires humility. Humility to accept that we cannot control everything, that there are things that are beyond our reach. And it is this humility that, little by little, takes over Kevin, preparing him for the next challenges. After so many stumbles, Kevin finds something unexpected, the offer of a family willing to give him shelter and support. This act of altruism is what he least expected, especially at a time when he feels aimless, completely lost in the whirlwind of life. Family not only provides a roof over his head, but also something much deeper, an opportunity to rediscover faith, something Kevin had lost long ago. They invite him to attend church, a place he had abandoned since everything began to fall apart. Kevin, however, is reluctant. For someone who has seen their life fall apart, it is difficult to believe in something greater, something beyond what is before their eyes. But the family insists, with a calm patience that leaves him disconcerted. They demand nothing in return, they just offer what they have, faith and compassion. And it makes you think. Maybe, just maybe, there's a chance that life could have something good in store for you again. After all, this family had no obligation to help him, but they are there anyway. Overcoming, at this point, begins to take on a new form for Kevin. When Kevin finally decides to accept the invitation and go to church, he is overcome with mixed feelings. You're not sure what to expect, and your heart is heavy with the drama of everything you've been through. As you enter the room, you feel a calm that you haven't experienced in years. The people around them seem genuinely happy, at peace. He wonders how it is possible to find so much serenity in a world that can be so cruel. It's as if that family's altruism had spread, touching everyone there. Spirituality begins to make sense in a new way. During the sermon, Kevin feels that the pastor's words are directed at him. It's as if someone, up there, knew exactly what he needed to hear. "We all deserve a second chance," says the pastor. These words resonate in your mind like a distant but powerful echo. He begins to understand that the turnaround he has been looking for may be right in front of him, waiting for him. The inspiration that arises from this simple gesture of compassion opens a crack of light in your hardened heart. Still, Kevin isn't completely convinced. Doubt is a faithful companion on his journey, and he finds himself questioning, is there really a greater force guiding our lives? Does your overcoming depend solely on believing in something beyond yourself? He struggles with these questions, but as he looks at the people around him, he sees something that intrigues him: hope. The faith that these people carry with them seems to be what keeps them standing. Maybe he has something to learn from this. As the sermon continues, Kevin finds himself reflecting on his own path. He had been so consumed by pain and loss that he forgot what it was to have faith. Not necessarily faith in something divine, but faith in life, faith in tomorrow. He begins to realize that the turnaround he has been waiting for may not come from a grand gesture or a miraculous event, but rather from small steps, from a series of daily choices. And it is at this moment that he begins to open his heart to the possibility of real change. When the ceremony ends, the family that welcomed him invites him to return the next Sunday. Kevin, still a little skeptical, smiles back. He knows that something has changed within him, even if it is a subtle change. He is no longer the man who entered that room, bound by the chains of the past. Little by little, overcoming takes shape, as a slow but constant process. He doesn't know what the future holds, but for the first time in a long time, he feels like he has a choice. And that, in itself, is already a victory. That sense of choice is something Kevin had lost a long time ago. He believed that his life was doomed to failure, to the endless cycle of mistakes and heartaches. But now, with the support of a family that expected nothing in return, he sees that there is another way. Humility begins to take root in his being, as he understands that he does not need to carry the weight of the world alone. There are people willing to help him, and, most importantly, he can accept that help without shame, without guilt. Spirituality, for Kevin, begins to become a kind of guide. Not necessarily the solution to all your problems, but a path that leads you to look inside yourself. Faith, at this point, is less about the divine and more about believing that he can be a better person, that he can rebuild his life. The selflessness of the family that welcomed him is a constant reminder that there is goodness in the world, and that goodness can be a beacon in the midst of darkness. With a slightly lighter heart, Kevin begins to think about the next steps in his journey. Overcoming now no longer seems like a distant concept, but something possible, tangible. He knows there is still a lot to face, but he also knows he is not alone. And for the first time, he's willing to give faith a chance, not just faith in something greater, but faith in himself and the possibility of a new life. Kevin, still with a heart full of hope, decides to try again with Jamie. He believes that if she just listens to what he has to say, things can go back to the way they were before. However, upon arriving at the door, he is greeted with a coldness that cuts deeper than any words. Jamie is firm in her decision to move on, and what was once love is now just a painful memory. Kevin, desperate, tries to argue, tries to convince her that he has changed, that he deserves a new chance. But his words seem to dissipate into thin air, as if they had no weight whatsoever. Rejection, this time, is different. It's not just the loss of a relationship, it's the loss of an identity, of a life he had built around Jamie. She was his point of stability, and now, without her, Kevin feels adrift, without a safe haven. The drama of this situation is palpable, but also inevitable. Jamie is no longer the same person, and Kevin, although he doesn't want to admit it, isn't either. Both changed, but in opposite directions. The turnaround he so longs for seems to slip through his fingers. At this moment, Kevin finds himself in a dilemma. He can insist, continue to pursue something that is already gone, or he can accept that life offers him new paths, even if these paths are not the ones he wanted. Overcoming, in this context, is bitter. It's not about achieving something, but about giving up. And letting go is never easy, especially when the heart is so involved. Kevin needs to learn that sometimes letting go is the most selfless act we can do, not just for ourselves, but for others as well. Kevin tries, one last time, to appeal to the good times they had together. He remembers the plans they made, the dreams they shared. "We can start again," he says, his voice thick with emotion. But Jamie is no longer willing to live in the past. She looks at him with eyes that leave no doubt, it's over. And this end, although difficult to accept, is necessary for both of them to move forward. Jamie's altruism, at this point, is clear. She understands that staying together would be more painful than separation. The scene is powerful, as it reflects a reality that many have faced. Rejection is a part of life, and what we do with it defines who we become. Kevin, still caught up in the drama of his own story, has trouble seeing beyond his pain. He doesn't understand that, by being rejected, he is being pushed into a new phase, a phase where he can rediscover himself and, who knows, find something even greater than what he lost. Inspiration to change is all around him, but he's not ready to embrace it yet. After the definitive rejection, Kevin feels as if the ground has been ripped out from under his feet. He wonders if everything he lived with Jamie was a lie, if she ever really loved him. These doubts eat away at his soul, and he finds himself trapped in a cycle of self-criticism and regret. But deep down, he knows that continuing to insist would be futile. He needs a turnaround, but that change will only happen when he accepts that control is not always in his hands. Jamie, in turn, says goodbye to Kevin with a mix of sadness and relief. She knows what they are doing is right, even if it hurts. Their time together was important, But now, they both need space to grow independently. Kevin, despite the pain, begins to realize that rejection is not the end of the world. On the contrary, it could be the start of something new. And it is at this moment that the seed of overcoming begins to take root. It's not easy, but it's necessary. Leaving Jamie's house, Kevin walks through the streets feeling the weight of rejection on his shoulders. He feels empty, as if a part of him has been ripped away. But as he walks, he also feels something different, a small spark of liberation. The pain is still there, but the idea that he can move on, that he can find a new purpose, begins to dawn. Jamie's selflessness in letting him go was perhaps the greatest gift she could have given him. Rejecting and being rejected are inevitable parts of life. Kevin is learning this the hard way. But this rejection, however painful it may be, is what will open doors for him to discover something that goes far beyond a relationship. True overcoming is not regaining what was lost, but finding the strength to walk in a new direction. And Kevin, without even knowing it, has already taken the first step on this journey. With a heavy heart but a slightly clearer mind, Kevin begins to consider the possibilities that now open up before him. Life, unpredictable as ever, continues to spin. And although he's still stuck in the past, he knows it's only a matter of time before a new opportunity arises. The important thing now is to be prepared to grab it when it comes. Kevin wasn't just an ordinary young man. He had a talent, a passion that set him apart, art. When he was younger, he spent hours creating, drawing, painting. Art was his escape valve, the place where he felt complete. But life, with its unexpected turns, took him away from that path. The death of his parents was the first blow, a tragic event that caused him to abandon what he loved most. Art, which was once his light, has turned into a burden. He could no longer pick up a brush without remembering the pain he felt. The drama of his life was just beginning. With the death of his parents, Kevin felt the weight of the world fall on his shoulders. He needed money, and fast. What was once a passion became something without purpose in his mind. Why keep drawing if it doesn't pay the bills, he thought. And that's how, little by little, he put aside what really moved him. The altruism, which was always present in his works, disappeared. Instead of expressing his feelings through art, Kevin started down a dangerous path, looking for quick and easy solutions. Overcoming seemed like a distant dream, something impossible to achieve. The turnaround was brutal. Kevin, who had once dreamed of being a successful artist, found himself involved in the world of crime. He started selling drugs, thinking that would be the solution to his immediate problems. What he didn't realize, however, was that he was trading his soul for easy money. He was not just abandoning art, he was abandoning himself. And, over time, this choice began to corrode his essence. The inspiration he had once felt when creating something new now seemed like a distant memory, something he could no longer reach. When Kevin was arrested, he had already forgotten what it was like to be an artist. The prison, in a sense, merely reflected the internal prison he had been living in for years. He became a shadow of who he once was, someone without direction, without passion. Art, which once brought meaning to his life, had been replaced by chaos. And looking back, Kevin wondered where it all went wrong. He knew there was a turning point, a moment when he chose the easy path, and that choice led him straight into darkness. Despite everything, there was a spark inside him that hadn't completely gone out yet. In his quieter moments, Kevin found himself thinking about art. I thought about what it would be like if I could go back in time, if I could pick up a brush and, once again, create something beautiful. But the reality was harsh. He knew that, after so many mistakes, returning to the path of art would not be easy. Yet the idea was there, like a small flame waiting to be lit. Overcoming, for Kevin, began to reveal itself not only as an act of redemption, but as a return to who he really was. Over time, Kevin began to realize that art was not just a passion, but a fundamental part of his identity. Without her, he felt empty, incomplete. He knew that in order to find peace, he needed to find that part of himself again. Inspiration could be anywhere, he just needed to open his eyes. Maybe it was time to pick up a pencil, to start slowly, to get back to basics. Humility would be his companion on this journey, as he knew that the path back to art would not be quick or easy. For many, art is seen as something superfluous, a luxury that few can afford to pursue. But for Kevin, art was much more than that. It was a way of connecting with the world, of expressing what I felt. He knew that if he wanted to truly overcome his past, he would need to rekindle that passion. It wouldn't be a simple task, but he was willing to try. After all, what did he have to lose? The turnaround was in his hands, and art could be his salvation. Deep down, Kevin knew he had never really stopped being an artist. Even during his darkest moments, art continued to live within him, waiting for the right moment to resurface. He just needed to have the courage to face his fears and allow that passion to return to the surface. Maybe it would be difficult, but he was willing to try. After all, that's what overcoming is, finding a way to move forward, to reconnect with what makes your heart beat faster. When thinking about art, Kevin began to see a new possibility for his life. He could use this passion not only for himself, but also to help others. Maybe you could teach children to draw, or create community projects for at-risk youth. Altruism, which had disappeared during his years of crime, could be a transformative force in his life. He just needed to take the first step. Kevin's journey was still far from over, but he was beginning to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Art, which he had abandoned, could be the path to his redemption. And with that thought, he began planning his return to the world he had once loved so much. Faith has always been something distant for Kevin. For much of his life, he saw faith as something abstract, reserved for those who needed comfort in times of difficulty. But now, after so many stumbles and losses, he begins to realize that faith may be the only thing capable of giving him new meaning. The family that welcomed him continues to insist that he must believe in something greater, that he must open his heart and allow hope to take hold. Kevin reluctantly begins to consider the possibility. After all, what else does he have to lose? In the first few weeks after arriving at this family's home, Kevin begins attending church, albeit hesitantly. At first, he goes more out of education than conviction. He sits on the last benches, watching from afar, without getting involved. But as the pastor's words echo throughout the room, something inside him begins to change. The idea that everyone deserves a second chance resonates in her heart in an unexpected way. Maybe, after all, he deserves this chance too. Faith begins to emerge timidly, like a small flame that threatens to grow. As the days go by, Kevin finds himself reflecting more and more on the words he hears in church. He doesn't fully understand what's happening, but he feels like something inside him is changing. Faith, which previously seemed so distant, now begins to make sense. He realizes that hope is not a matter of ignoring problems, but rather believing that there is a solution, even if it is not yet clear. Inspiration begins to emerge in small moments, in conversations with his family, and the prayers that he now tries to say, albeit clumsily. Kevin begins to realize that faith is not about religion, necessarily, but about believing in himself and his ability to overcome the obstacles that life has imposed on him. The church, with its stories of forgiveness and redemption, offers a new perspective. He sees people who also made mistakes, but who found a way back. This feeling of belonging, that you are not alone on your journey, is what gives you the strength to continue. Overcoming now seems more possible than before, and faith begins to take root in your heart. Even though the change doesn't happen overnight, Kevin begins to surrender to the process. He discovers that faith is not a magical solution to his problems, but rather a source of strength to face them. He begins to understand that the path to overcoming is long and full of challenges, but that with faith, he can find the necessary balance to continue. And it's this discovery that keeps you going, even when things seem difficult. Hope, fueled by faith, is what motivates you to move forward. As time passes, Kevin begins to feel more comfortable in the church. He gets more involved in activities, talks to other people, listens to their stories. Altruism, which previously seemed like a distant idea, begins to be part of his new life. He sees himself helping the community, participating in actions that benefit those, like him, who are trying to find their way. The turnaround in your life is happening, albeit in a subtle way. And it all starts with the simple decision to believe that there is something beyond what your eyes can see. Faith, for Kevin, is no longer just an abstract idea. It becomes a concrete force, something he can feel in his daily actions. He begins to see the positive impact he is having on the lives of those around him, and this inspires him to keep going. The humility he fought so hard to accept is now part of who he is. He understands that he doesn't need to carry the weight of the world alone, that there is something bigger guiding his steps. And with this understanding, he begins to walk more confidently, with more confidence in the future. Kevin also realizes that faith is deeply linked to forgiveness, both the forgiveness he needs to give himself and the forgiveness he needs to receive from others. The church taught him that everyone makes mistakes, but that those mistakes don't have to define the rest of your life. He begins to believe that he can leave his past behind and build a new story. Overcoming is now within your reach, and faith is what gives you the strength to keep trying, even when things seem difficult. The inspiration Kevin finds in faith also makes him think about his role in the world. He begins to wonder how he can use his experience to help others who are going through similar times. He realizes that his journey of overcoming is not just for him, it's something that can inspire others to also find their path. Faith, which began as a small flame, now burns brightly, illuminating your path and the path of others who find themselves lost in the darkness. Now, with a renewed heart, Kevin begins to see life with different eyes. He doesn't know what the future holds, but he knows he's prepared to face it. Faith taught him to trust the process, to believe that, regardless of the difficulties, there will always be a way out. Overcoming, which previously seemed impossible, is now in your hands. And with that, he's ready for the next stage of his journey, a journey guided by faith, hope, and the knowledge that everyone deserves a second chance. Kevin, after so many stumbles and learnings, begins to see that redemption is not a destination, but a path. He realizes that true overcoming is not just in correcting past mistakes, but in committing to live differently from now on. Faith, which was once a novelty in your life, now becomes a foundation. And it is from this solid foundation that he begins to rebuild his story, brick by brick. He understands that redemption is a daily choice, a series of small decisions that, when added together, can transform your life. The process of redemption is not simple. Kevin faces challenges every day. There are times when the past haunts you, when the temptation to return to old habits appears like a shadow on your path. But now he has something he didn't have before, hope. And this hope makes him believe that, no matter how difficult it is, he can overcome these obstacles. The turnaround he has been waiting for is happening, albeit slowly. He feels that, for the first time in years, he is in control of his destiny. The real inspiration for Kevin, however, comes not just from his faith, but from the people around him. The family that took him in, the church community, they all believe in him, even when he has trouble believing in himself. This altruism, this belief in the potential for redemption, is what drives him to move forward. He begins to see that redemption is not just about redeeming himself, but also about making a difference in the lives of others. Every small act of kindness, every gesture of generosity, brings you closer to your new identity. As Kevin surrenders to this process of transformation, he begins to reconnect with his old passions, like art. He realizes that the path to redemption also involves finding purpose in his life. Art, which was once abandoned, now becomes a tool to express your journey of overcoming. Every drawing, every painting, is a reflection of where he has been and where he is going. Humility accompanies him on this journey, as he knows that redemption is a continuous process and not something that can be achieved once and for all. Deep down, Kevin understands that true redemption requires sacrifice. He cannot simply erase past mistakes, but he can choose not to repeat those mistakes in the future. This requires discipline, willpower, and, above all, faith. With each passing day, he becomes more aware that redemption is not about being perfect, but about getting up every time he falls. He begins to see the beauty in this process, the strength that comes from facing his fears and weaknesses head-on. The community around him also begins to notice the change in Kevin. He, who was once viewed with suspicion, is now respected for his resilience. People begin to be inspired by his story, by his ability to rise again after so many falls. And it's at that moment that Kevin realizes that his redemption isn't just about him. His journey is an example that no matter how deep someone falls, there is always a chance to get back up. He becomes a source of inspiration for those who are in their own struggle to overcome. The altruism Kevin finds in community support makes him reflect on his own role in the world. He begins to wonder how he can use his experience to help others. Perhaps your redemption is, in fact, tied to your ability to impact lives beyond your own. He starts volunteering in social projects, working with young people who, like him, face the temptation of making wrong choices. He realizes that by helping others find their path, he is also reinforcing his own redemption. Every day is an opportunity for Kevin to continue on this path of overcoming. He knows it won't be easy, but now he has tools he didn't have before: faith, the support of a community, and confidence in himself. He no longer lives in the past. You are focused on the present, on what you can do today to be a better person. Redemption, for him, is not an end, but a beginning. A new chapter of his life is being written, and he is determined to make this chapter different from all the others. Kevin also begins to understand that redemption is, in part, about forgiving himself. He had punished himself for so long, carrying the weight of his bad choices, that he forgot the value of forgiveness. Now, he sees that forgiving himself is essential to moving forward. This does not mean forgetting the past, but rather accepting it as part of who he is, without letting it define who he will be. True overcoming lies in accepting your failures and using them as fuel to grow. Now, with a heart full of hope and a new worldview, Kevin is ready to face anything life throws his way. He understands that redemption is not something that can be achieved once and for all, but a commitment that is renewed daily. And with this new perspective, he feels stronger, more confident, and, above all, more prepared to continue his journey of transformation. Kevin is proof that we all have the chance to rewrite our own history. Facing rejections, losses, and dilemmas, he found, in the faith and altruism of a new family, the strength to move forward. But the real question is, what are you going to do with it all? How many times have you felt lost, believing there is nothing else you can do? Maybe the answer is closer than you think, within yourself. Transformation begins when you decide not to be defined by your mistakes, but by what you do with them. And you? Are you willing to make this change in your life? Are you ready to face your challenges with the same courage that Kevin found within himself? Sometimes, what prevents us from overcoming are not external obstacles, but the barriers we place in our minds. What will you do today to change the course of your story? Think about the opportunities around you and the people who are ready to support you, even in the most difficult times. If you want to continue learning more about topics such as overcoming, transformation, and redemption, be sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. The journey of change begins with a simple choice. And who knows? The next step towards your new life could be just a click away.